Hello nerds! This is the Monday Flashback, a news format that will try to break down the most important things that happened last week so you only have to watch a short video instead of reading through all the threads and all the news yourself. Let's get right into the thick of things. It's the China Super League, aka the China Cup, that will offer roughly $100,000 in China. That's not only a big pile of money in Europe, but also in China. So a lot of money up for grabs. And the format is something really special. We will have the likes of CyberSen and Tailu, whereas CyberSen has been picked up by Vici Gaming. But we will have those kind of names compete in a regular season first. And after that, we will have the China Cup. It's an offline tournament with 4 teams competing in 2 days for the rest of the money. The regular season will only feature Chinese teams that compete in a weekly double round robin format for the top 2 spots to qualify for the China Cup. In the China Cup, we will have the 2 Chinese teams joined by 1 Asian team and 1 European team. The way the Asian and the European team will qualify has not been disclosed yet, but we will probably find out sometime soon. Back in Europe, the Go Champions League Season 3 has been announced. With $20,000 up for grabs, the organizers decided to lower the prize pot, but they already have something big in the works for the later part of the year. So they decided to invest the money in the big tournament and just have the Go Champions League with a 20k. Teams will be names like Dignitas, SK, eFrag, Vexed, Attacks, and many more. For example, Gambit as well, and 2 teams from a qualifier that has been played out yesterday, with Team 123 from Denmark qualifying, and one side that nobody really knows yet, so that's going to be interesting. The teams will be split in 2 groups with a best of 3 double elimination bracket, and the top 2 sides of both teams, of both groups, of course, will advance to the playoffs. The playoffs will feature a single elimination bracket. Copenhagen Games have announced their first 4 invites. The $30,000 tournament will feature ENCE or NC, eFrag, SK, and Dignitas. Being close to the major, we will probably not see any teams that compete in the major compete at Copenhagen Games, but we have a lot of talented teams that could or will be invited to the Copenhagen Games. But let's get to the most important part of this edition's news. It's the IEM Katowice 2016. With a prize pot of over $250,000, this has been a really major worthy tournament. Obviously, the teams and contestants have been the top of the scene, the cream of the crop, so to speak, and Fnatic won it all. So let's see how this all unfolded and what is there that, things that we can take away from the tournament, things we might have learned from it. Fnatic's win over Luminosity in the grand final hasn't been really decisive. I mean, it ended 3-0, and in 10 years probably nobody will ask us anymore, but Luminosity brought them to 2 overtimes in the first and the third map. It was a 19-17 on overpass with a huge comeback by Fnatic, and then they managed to close it out in the overtime. So that was a well-deserved win by the Swedes. After that, the momentum has been broken a little bit. It was a 16-3 whitewash in favor of Fnatic on cash, but Luminosity managed to rattle themselves, get back together, and put up a huge fight on the last map. Inferno ended 19-15, so again an overtime win for the Swedes. And speaking of overtimes, Luminosity was probably the team, I don't even know if they are the team with the most overtimes, but they had a lot of them. Na'Vi managed to get to the semifinal, and then they lost 22-19 against the Brazilians. After that double overtime on overpass, they moved on to Inferno, where Luminosity won 16-12. The road to the final wasn't easy for Fnatic either. They had to face Astralis. The Danes managed to qualify straight to the semifinal with a flawless group stage of 5 wins and 0 losses. But once again, Fnatic was too strong for Astralis, A 2-1 win in maps for the Swedes. 16-6 on overpass for the Swedes to start off with. Then it was Astralis winning cash 16-12 with a very good performance. I mean, they showed a lot of resilience there. But ultimately, it was Fnatic winning Inferno 16-7. The bummers of this tournament, obviously Envious. They only managed to win one game. A game that decided the fate of FaZe, though, who didn't qualify for the playoffs because they lost against Envious. A team that I have to mention here is eFrag, who managed to bring down the Frenchmen 22-19. Another bummer was obviously NAP's performance, who again didn't impress. They went out in group stages, but you have to look at the results they got, because they almost won against Fnatic and they managed to win against Luminosity. So they almost got the better of the two finalists of the tournament, and you gotta give them a small amount of credit for that. It all could have been way different in this tournament. Talking about things that could have been different, Mouseboards, one of the good but not best teams in the IEM Katowice, they got themselves almost over the hump, but ultimately they didn't get through. They lost 16-14 against Luminosity and brought Fnatic to an overtime, which they lost 19-17. But you gotta say, Mouseboards had the game in the palm of their hands. They just had to squeeze it a little more. Nah, they failed a little bit in closing out the game. So Fnatic showed their experience. They showed how it's done, so to speak. And Mouseboards showed some promise, but they have to get even stronger for the major. Another good but not best team was obviously Tempo Storm, the second Brazilian team in the IEM Katowice. They managed to get out of the groups in the second spot in their group, so that was a really good result for them already. But then Na'Vi was a little bit too strong in the quarterfinal, so the Ukrainian squad moved on to the semifinal, where you already know Luminosity, the other Brazilian team, took revenge for their brothers. Virtus Pro was maybe one of the surprising teams at IEM. They don't have the best results in the ESL Pro League, but they still managed to get out of groups. But then they got handled by Fnatic. 16-5 on Train and 16-8 on Inferno. So really, the Poles did a good job of getting out of the groups at first. But then Fnatic is a level ahead of them. And that's what I really would like to see Virtus Pro work on, so they can get back to that level where they can compete against the very, very top again. At the same time as IEM Katowice, we also had the Intel Challenge Katowice, a female tournament. WRTP, the team of Saz, managed to win against CLG Red, the team of Miss Harvey, and, well, took home the majority of the prize money. It was a rather decisive 16-10 on Mirage and 16-8 on Cash in favor of the European squad. Congratulations to WRTP, and I hope to see more female CSGO in the future. So we broke down the majority of the news already. Let's get to the small bits and pieces that I gathered. But you know, sometimes the small breadcrumbs, they tell you a small part of a bigger story. Dendity, for example, they seek support for the Copenhagen Games so they can go there and compete. Speaking of Copenhagen Games, another team that we might see compete over there is Cringe Gods, who were picked up by Epsilon just recently. And talking about Cringe Gods, they lost one of their team members to Team 123, which I already mentioned at the Go Champions League part. They consist of Barry and Sandon, two ex-SK team members, Holtz Resex from Cringe Gods, and Mertz. A tiny change in method as well. They removed Waterfalls and Dirksky joined them. And to round everything up, we end up in China again. EDG, aka Edward Gaming, decided to pick up their first CSGO squad. It's a completely new team, and you know, Chinese players are not too well known in Europe, but it's a huge step for the Chinese scene to have all the bigger MOBA related organizations come in and support CSGO. I already mentioned CyberSend being signed by Vici earlier on. It's Savage and TV finally being picked up by Vici, who already announced that move to pick up a CSGO team early on, but it took them quite long to figure out whom and how to pick them up. Cybersen had a pretty impressive run at the Asia Minor where they dropped 2 Renegades. But I think if the Chinese scene starts to blossom and bloom like they do right now, they can really put up a fight. Give them 6 more months and I'm sure we will see them compete at the top level. And last but not least, David P., an ex-Penta team member, joined We Got Game. We Got Game was a 2013 French lineup with Kenny S, for example. So they brought up a few big names already. Maybe they can do the same again. So that was it for the first edition of the Monday Flashback. I hope you enjoyed this format, and if you have any feedback, any criticism, fire away in the comments. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, and yeah, that's it. See you next week.